All right, so this week, tomorrow morning, I have an order of feed coming in. I have a load of feed coming in, and what is going to happen this week is on Saturday morning I will be taking the big ones out of here. So I got those 4 big animals. I got the 2 big black steers, and then I got that this big black or this big red heifer, and then I got this big gray animal. The 4 of them, I will take them to the sale barn by myself on Saturday. And then the other 15 animals that are on the lease property, they will be getting loaded up on Sunday morning and go to the sale barn. And so the big idea, and then on a Sunday evening, I will come back over here and I will pick up maybe 8 of these animals, 7 of these animals, and I will take them back over to the lease property. And then I'll leave 7 or 8 animals on that lease property for about a week. And by the next week, because for the whole week it's supposed to be getting pretty hot. It's supposed to be getting pretty hot, and I don't have any rain. And so I don't want to put a bunch of animals on that field and then have them drinking a bunch of poo-poo water. So next week is supposed to be getting warm, and so next week I'm not going to have any of the animal. I'm only going to put 7 or 8 animals on the lease property, and then I will take the money. Okay, because here's the thing. So here's the big idea. On Saturday, I take the 4 big animals out of here to the sale barn by myself. On Sunday morning, I get the animals on the lease property loaded up and taken to the sale barn. Sunday evening, I take 7 or 8 animals from this field over to the lease property. Monday morning, I go and I buy. I'm looking to buy smaller calves. And here's the thing. Why am I looking to buy smaller calves this time? And this is also why I ordered the feed. And I'll pay for the feed on Monday when I get my check from selling my 19 cattle. And so here's the big idea. Why am I I think that this is a good time to look at this what I call the commodity market interaction, right? There are interactions in the commodity markets, right? Corn and cattle, okay? Corn is effectively the baseline for all cattle feed. So when you take a look at the price of corn on the commodity market, you can effectively gauge what is happening with the feeder cattle market, okay? Well, not effectively gauge what is happening with the feeder cattle market, but there is an interaction between corn and feeder cattle. Okay, so let's talk about this right now. And I'm actually looking to buy animals that are lighter. All right, probably bring them in under 350. I'm not gonna go up to 450, 500 right now, and I'll tell you why. What I would anticipate happens. The price of corn went down by about 10% in the last week, okay? The price of corn plummeted in the last week. It went down almost 10%. The last time I looked at it, it was sitting at 449. So, corn is effectively the baseline for all cattle feed, okay? Corn is effectively the baseline for all cattle feed. And the big feed yards are the ones that, I talk about this, the big feed yards are the ones that you want to do business with because they are the ones pushing the most amount of money. All right, when you talk about a large feed yard, you're talking about commercial beef. The people who feed the entire planet, commercial beef. All right, the guys with the people with the most money. All right, when we're talking about commercial beef, we're talking about you going to the grocery store and buying a steak. That's what we're talking about. You're going to the store and you're buying some ground beef. All right, those are the people that we're talking about. The people that effectively feed the entire planet. All right, the commercial beef industry. So and these people are the ones that buy the most. They utilize the most capital in the farming industry, or not the most, but in terms of the beef cattle market, they are the ones that you want to do business with because they have more money than everybody. All right, they are the ones that you want to do business with. They have more money than everybody. Okay, in terms of the beef cattle industry. All right, just about. All right, they have the most money, and they are always buying product and they are always selling product. So let's take a look at it. The interaction between corn and feeder cattle. The price of corn fell almost 10% in the last week. So this is a very realistic way to look at it. If the price of feed is low, people will the people at the feed yards will buy the bigger animals because it is cheaper to feed them. All right, and I talk about this all the time. The bigger the animal is, the easier time you will have with the animal. All right, the bigger the animal is, the easier time you will have with the animal. when you have a small little animal, the smaller the animal is, the more difficult it is to raise the animal. When you have a big animal like this, right, when you have a big animal like that, they're going to eat a lot. Number one, they will eat a lot. You can actually probably put on over 3 pounds a day on an animal like this very easily. All right, they're not going to die from having a minor case of acidosis. A tiny little calf could very well die from having a little bit of acidosis. Okay, so the bigger the animal is, the easier it is to raise the animal. All right, significantly easier. And so when you have cheaper feed, when the price of feed falls drastically all of a sudden, when there is downwards momentum in the feed market, which is gauged by the price of corn, and corn is a commodity, you can just look it up on the stock market. When the price of corn is going downwards, and it fell 10% in the last week, when the price of corn is going downwards, the heavier animals will do better at the market. All right, they will do better at the market because why would you not do that, right? I mean, if you can save money on feed, and you can feed an animal, if it is much easier to raise a 700-pound animal, it is much easier to raise an 800-pound animal than it is to raise a 350-pound animal than a 250-pound animal. All right, much easier. When you have a 800-pound animal, that animal is effectively squared away and good to go, right? Effectively squared away and good to go. Nothing going on, with that animal, right? Effectively. That's the big idea. But when you have a 250-pound animal, that animal may have been weaned at the sale barn, right? Someone might have just pulled that calf off the cow and taken them to the sale barn, right? It might have taken them to the sale barn. They might have maternal antibodies, right? They may not even have a developed rumen, right? They may have all of these things going on, right? And then you have to be extremely good. I mean, okay. Here's the thing about running cattle, and I'm not lying about this. If you want to go and figure it out for yourself, go and figure it out for yourself. If you're going to raise 250-pound cattle, all right, and I've already suggested don't do this, because if you raise 250-pound cattle, you are effectively talking about the most difficult situation you could ever imagine. All right, legitimately, all right, farming is already hard enough as it is. All right, you're talking about the most difficult situation you could ever imagine. And I talk about this in terms of a reality sense. The reason that people don't do this is because it is almost impossible. Farming is almost impossible. All right, chances are and if you want to figure that out for yourself, then go and do it. I actually made it, and I am telling you, I don't know anybody even doing 10%. Legitimately not. I haven't seen one person on the entire planet do 10%. There's a reason. I'm telling you, I legitimately live where I work, and I work 7 days a week, and I work sometimes I work more than 15 hours a day, and I've been doing this for a very long time. I had to learn how to grow crop, I had to learn how to run a business, and I had to learn how to run cattle, and I had to do all three of these things at a very high level. I'm borderline like the best cattleman on the planet, one of them. One of the best crop growers on the entire planet, and one of the best businessmen on the entire planet. It took a long time to learn how to do this. And if you want to figure that out for yourself, then go and do it. Nobody cares about your opinion. All right, nobody cares. I mean, go and do it. All right, nobody cares. I actually do this stuff in real life. And then I talk about this, but if you have the smaller your animal is, the harder it becomes to raise that animal. And because, it's like, okay, because, it's like every once in a while, like you'll go on YouTube and, be like, like every once in a while, like, I don't know if this is out of context. Like, I don't know if they took these clips out of context or what happened, but, like every once in a while you'll see like a short and they'll be like, oh, you just have to go out and buy 100 units, right? You just have to go and buy, you just have to go out and buy 100 rental properties. And then you're good to go. And and it's like, I feel like that okay, because when you look at my situation, all right, and it's like I'm effectively running maybe about as of today, maybe I run about 200 cattle a year by myself, and I'll probably be increasing that to about 250 to 400 cattle a year by myself. I'm telling you, most people cannot even run 50 cattle a year. All right, most people can't even do 10%. And if it was easy, if it was even relatively close to being easy, everybody would do it. All right, I mean, running cattle is not easy, and if you don't take this seriously, you're not gonna make it. I mean, I don't know how else to tell you. You're not even gonna do 10% if you live to be 5,000. All right, if you don't take this seriously, you're not gonna make it. All right, I'm being completely honest about it. And I give you, and that's also why I tell you things like, if you grow 10 acres of grass, it will cost you like $400. All right, if you grow 10 acres of grass, you can easily feed 30 cattle on it. Easily. All right, and it will cost you like not even like $2,000 a year. All right, if you're just growing grass, and you're not worried about running the cattle yet, which is what I suggest, right? If you're just learning how to grow the grass, because just learning how to grow grass properly might take you legitimately 10 years. It might legitimately take you 8 years just to learn how to grow the grass. All right, and then you add cattle on top of that, and you add learning how to run a business on top of that. I mean, if you do not get started, you will effectively never make it. It doesn't matter what you think. You're not even going to do 10% if you live to be 5,000. All right, I'm being completely serious about this. This is not a joke. All right, if you do not get started, if you do not start learning how to grow grass, if you do not start learning how to run cattle, if you do not start learning how to run a business, all of this stuff takes a long time. I can give you all of the information for free, but if you do not do the work, nobody cares. You're not going to make it. All right, that's how it pans out. This stuff takes a long time and a massive level of effort. If it was easy, if everybody could just walk out into the world and just start tomorrow, start running 250 cattle a year by themselves, 400 cattle a year by themselves like I'm doing, everybody would do it. Everybody would do it. But running 250 cattle a year, running 400 cattle a year by yourself is going to be one of the most difficult things you could ever imagine. Legitimately, one of the most difficult things you could ever imagine. All right, you're not just, but that's what you will have to do something like this. Like, if you legitimately want to do something like this, and here's the thing, let's say that you can actually run 250 cattle a year, let's say that you can run 400 cattle a year, but you can't grow the grass, or you can't run the business properly. Then guess what? You don't get to have anything. All right, because somewhere you will lose all your money. You will have to buy a bunch of cattle feed. The commodity markets will go out of whack, and then you'll end up losing all your money. You will hemorrhage all of your money. All right, and to do something like this, you effectively need to be like one of the best on the planet. All right, and if you do not get started, you're not going to make it. And nobody cares about an opinion. I'm telling you, nobody cares about an opinion. If you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, it's not going to do anything. What are you going to do with your opinions? You're going to feel good about yourself, right? Are you going to go to the bank, right? I mean, what are you going to do with your opinions? You're not going to do anything. You actually have to do the work. All right, if you don't do the work, nobody cares. You could be an I fell out of heaven a 7 in my life's a magical journey land forever, and nobody cares. All right, you'll just die there. You'll never make it out. You will legitimately sit there with everybody else that is an I fell out of heaven a 7 in my life's a magical journey land, and you will all sit there together. And you will never make it anywhere your entire life. All right, and I talk about this all the time. I'm not some malicious person. I don't give you the wrong information, right? I don't tell you the wrong things, right? I don't sit here and go, I'm not. And if you want to figure this stuff out for yourself, then go and figure it out. I would actually be, that would be incredible. If you actually turned around and figured this stuff out for yourself, I would be very happy for you. But all right, I'm just letting you know, okay? The smaller your animal is, all right? The smaller your animal is, the more difficult it becomes. When you have a 250-pound animal, you're effectively talking about a difficulty rate that is maybe 100 times harder than raising a 700-pound animal, maybe 100 times harder. Unbelievably difficult. The hardest thing you will ever do in your entire life. Legitimately, farming is not some easy thing. All right, if farming, when's the last time you heard of somebody going to farming and say, I went into farming because it was easy and I can make a massive amount of money? When's the last time you heard anybody say that? When's the last time you heard anybody say that, right? I mean, you know, you have to get started, all right? I put a lot of emphasis. If you do not do the work, you do not get the results. If you do not do the work, you do not get the results. Nobody cares, all right? You know, and I'm telling you that, like, this is, I mean, this might be hard to whatever, to digest, or maybe you've never thought about this, but, you know, legitimately what's going to happen is that if you cannot do it, you will go out into the world, right? You will go out into the world and you'll be poor and you'll be proud of yourself. And you'll have all these problems and you're not really going to be good for nothing. You'll be practically be a bum. And then you will legitimately accomplish nothing your entire life. That's actually what's going to happen. That is legitimately what it's going to. Nobody's going to come in to swoop in and save you. Nobody cares. You know, legitimately, you will end up in a situation where you cannot do anything. You'll practically be a bum for the rest of your life, and then you'll never get anywhere. That's legitimately what's going to happen. Nobody's going to come running in to save you. There is no easy way out of this. You legitimately have to do the work. If you do not do the work, you will never figure it out. It doesn't matter if I give you the best information in the world, which, you know, I give you the best information that I can, and I have some of the best results in the world. Legitimately, if we're talking about business, I have some of the best results in the world. I can, even if I had $0, I could still start myself a business and make massive amounts of money. That's effectively how good I am at business. If I had, you know, even if I had $0, I can start myself a farm. Right? I've already told you this is how you find a lease property. When I do my lease deals, this is how I structure my lease deals. I pay out a dividend of the earnings. I don't pay anything up front. I pay out a dividend, right? You know, you don't need money. You actually need to know how to farm. Right? If you do not learn how to farm, you're not going to make it. I mean, you know, if you don't know how to farm, it doesn't matter if you have $100 million. It won't matter. It won't do anything. All right, you know, and after a certain point, and I talk about this, but, you know, after a certain point, the money doesn't really even do anything. All right, the money doesn't even do anything. I mean, you know, you legitimately just, you know, the money doesn't really even do anything. After about $15,000 a month, the money does not really do anything, because if you live on 10 grand and you invest 5 grand a month for the rest of your life, you will never worry about money again. Legitimately. And then you just live within your budget, you will legitimately never worry about money again. And the difference, you know, the only difference, and I'll put it in my perspective, because, you know, I've actually made minimum wage. I've actually made $7.25, and I have, you know, as of today, I make about $35,000 a month, and my income will actually I would anticipate that my income ends up going up very drastically, very rapidly. And, you know, and I've been talking about this, and I'll even go over that again. So, you know, the whole thing about this all, you know, after about, you know, the only thing that changed in my life between making $15,000 a month and making $35,000, you know, because last year I was making about, you know, I actually blew all of my records out of the water this year, you know, because I was talking about this last year. My business was making about $5,000 to $7,000 a month, right? About a year and a half ago, my business was making about $5,000 to $7,000 a month. As of today, my business, you know, I effectively had 0 death loss. I had 3 to 4% death loss. My death loss was very low, and I actually increased the rate of gain of my animals, and I reduced my expenses, and I increased the size of my herd by like 30-40%. That's what, you know, I legitimately ended up like doubling, you know, as of today, this business. Okay, here's another way to look at the money. Because this, you know, I would anticipate that my cattle business makes somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 a month. All right, maybe even $35,000. Here's another way to look at it. This weekend, I will be selling 19. And at the end of the day, you know, it's like, if you don't believe me, why would I care? All right, I mean, it's not like my checks are just going to evaporate. I legitimately make so much money in the cattle business that I can do anything on the planet. And I figured that somebody in the world out there must want to learn how to run cattle like me, or just run cattle in general, not even like me. If anything, do it better than me. Let's see it, right? And I would love to see that. Do better than me, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, it is what it is, running cattle, it's like, I think that when you do difficult things, when you actually find somebody who is capable of doing very difficult things, it kind of just like, it's eye-opening for you. It's like, wow, here is a guy who was legitimately doing like the hardest thing that you could ever imagine, and he is doing it to a very high level. That's kind of incredible. It's kind of like eye-opening, right? It's kind of inspirational. It's like, here is a man who legitimately is doing like the most difficult thing you could ever imagine, and he's doing exceptionally well. That's kind of inspirational, right? I want to be encouraging more people to be successful, because at the end of the day, I legitimately make enough money running cattle to do anything on the planet. I already do. I mean, it doesn't matter. All right, and here's the thing. The only difference between making $15,000 a month and making $35,000 a month is that my business will grow faster. My business will grow faster. That's the only difference. It's not like, oh my God, now that I, doubled my income, now that I went from now that I went from $17,000 a month to $35,000 a month, now I can buy myself a Lamborghini. It doesn't work out like that. The only difference that happened between $15,000 a month and $35,000 a month is that I was able to grow my business faster. That's the only difference. It didn't improve the quality of my life at all. All right, other than the fact that I legitimately do not worry about money at all anymore. I don't worry about money at all. I don't have to. There is not a micro sliver of my soul that is worried about money. If I run cattle, I will have money. If I farm, I will have money. Legitimately. Granted that I don't start doing drugs, granted that I don't start drinking all the time, I will legitimately have money all the time just because I know how to farm. I can effectively farm better than anybody on the planet by a long shot. And this is not something that you can make up. All right, nobody cares about your opinion. Actually go out and do it. Go out and do it, and then you'll find out. Farming is borderline like one of the hardest things you could ever imagine doing. And just another way to look at it, I will end up running about 250 to somewhere between 250 and 400 cattle a year by myself. All right, I've already ran 70. I've already done 70 for the year. By the end of the year, and it's only been 5 months, and I'm actually compounding growth, right? I will end up running somewhere around 250 to 400 cattle a year by myself. That's, and it's like, that's, and when I do that, I effectively get to have so much money that it doesn't matter. Okay, granted that I do my part, but running cattle is not some easy thing. All right, farming is not some easy thing. All right, if it was easy to run 350, if it was easy to run 250 cattle a year by yourself, everybody would go and do it. Everybody would. Who wouldn't? All right, but I'm telling you, it is not easy. And if you do not take it seriously, you're not going to make it. You're not even going to do 10% if you live to be 5,000. All right, and at the end of the day, God can be my witness. Why would, because at the end, and I've talked about this, a lot of people are a massive pile of problems. All right, chances are, if you're watching my channel and you're watching me right now, chances are you yourself are a massive pile of problems. All right, you're not some massive success story. Chances are you're not. All right, God knows it. You gave up a long time ago, right? You're poor and proud. I fell out of heaven at 7, and my life's a magical journey, right? Whatever, you're completely backwards. Oh my God, money is like this horrible thing, and then you would immediately sell your soul for any small denomination. I mean, a lot of problems. Okay, you see this happen all the time. All right, a bunch of people with the wrong idea, they're okay, and I've actually determined that what is actually probably happening is that you have a person who is insecure, proud of themselves, and now they're coping with that. You see this a lot with money. You see this a lot. People, with the complete wrong idea. Oh my God, everything is unfair. And then you take a look at their finances, and they're spending way more than they make. They have zero intentions of increasing their income. They have zero idea. No, they have zero intentions of doing better for themselves. They're just convinced that everything is unfair. Right, and then they latch on to other people who feel the exact same way as they do, because now it's easier for them to cope. And I've already talked about this in terms of money. You should be sending your money upwards. All right, you should be sending the amount of money that you make upwards. You should be looking to improve your financial situation, and the most realistic way to do this is to what? Invest your money. invest it. If you invest it in a good asset that produces you a positive return, you know, like the S&P 500, that is like the most effective way to increase your income. All right, if you find a little bit of a better job, and you manage to make some more money, take that money and invest it. That's how you solve the problem. I am telling you, that is how you solve the problem. All right, do not latch on to other people with the exact same issues that you are having. That's what I call the group hug. You don't want to be in a group hug, all right? If you have 50 bums in a room, you just have 50 bums in a room. You don't want to be in a group hug. You want to be in a situation where you are looking to improve your situation. I have a reasonable idea for how I will raise my income. I'm looking for a better job, and I will take that money that I make when I work or whatever. I will take the extra money that I make and I will invest it. That is like the most reasonable thing that you can do with money, and that is how you increase your money to a reasonable level. All right, that is how you do it. All right, you want to start investing your money. If you invest your money in a good asset that produces you a positive return, and you collect that asset, that is how you raise your income. All right, I fell out of heaven at 7, and my life's a magical journey, and everything's unfair. Nobody cares, die poor. All right, you're going to have to work on doing better for yourself. You're going to have to work on improving your situation. If you are not working, because, okay, here's the thing. If you actually start going down the death spiral, you actually start going down the doom loop of eternal poorness, right? You are effectively in a situation where you are proud of yourself, you're poor, you're kind of a bum, you're insecure, and now you're coping with all these problems, and whatever, right? And you're just effectively scraping out the bottom for the rest of your life, if not going downhill slowly. And then you latch on to other people who are doing the exact same thing as you. What's going to happen is that you will just end up dying poor. All right, you have to work on this. You have to enter a situation where you are looking to improve your situation. You have to work on it. Make some more money and invest your money. And I would not suggest becoming a farmer. If you legitimately want to become a farmer, and and I talk about this. If you legitimately want to become a farmer, work on getting to the 10% mark. If you do 10% of what I do, you will actually be able to practice for free. You might even make a little bit of a profit. If you can just do 10%. All right, if you can do 10%, you can actually practice for free. You might even make a little bit of a profit. And here's the thing, because this weekend, let's say that everything goes okay for the next 4 days. Let's say that everything goes okay for the next 3 or 4 days, right? Let's just imagine that things go okay. Well, if things go okay, I will be selling 19 of my animals. These 19 animals will hit the scale at like a 700 and a quarter, 725, maybe even, 700, 750, something like that. I will have brought all of these animals home at about 325, and I will be selling them at about 750, 700. I will have more than doubled their weight. I will make enough money to buy 30 cattle, 2 loads of grain, a load of fertilizer, and I will still probably have money left over. And I will have another set of animals ready to go for market in 2 months. All right, I am effectively doubling the size of my balance sheet over the next maybe 3.5 months. Doubling it. And I've talked about this in terms of a realistic perspective. My income has entered a situation where I am actually going parabolic. I am going exponential. My income is legitimately going up on an exponential curve. It's not even linear. My income is legitimately like doubling every but granted that my income, okay. My income is actually going up by about, by the end of the year, my income will have gone up by about maybe 350% than the income that I started with, legitimately. And this is what I talk about when I say investing your money is the most realistic way to make money. And improving your situation is very important. All right, this is what I'm talking about, because at the beginning of the year, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, I will legitimately have increased my income by like 250 to 350%. Legitimately, I will have. I legitimately make so much money farming that it doesn't even matter. I can buy anything on the entire planet, short of like drugs, alcohol, gambling, short of anything like that. I can buy anything on the entire planet. All right, effectively anything. I legitimately make so much money farming. I don't even know how much money I make. All right, and if I double the size of my balance sheet, I can just pay for whatever I need on my credit card. And when I sell my cattle at the point of the month where I'm going to sell them, I can just pay for the bill. It does not matter. And at the end of the day, nobody did this for me. I legitimately am a first generation farmer. And at the end of the day, God as my witness, I'm not lying about it. What is there to lie about? Do my cattle look fake? Does my grass look fake? Do my checks look fake? What is there to lie about? What is there to lie about? I don't lie about it. I'm legitimately a first generation farmer. I figure, and I effectively make more money farming my 50 acres than anybody on the planet makes doing anything, just about. If it was easy to do this, everybody would do it. Nobody cares about an opinion, right? If you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, congratulations, you're a bum and you're gonna die poor. It's not like your life is going to turn into a magical adventure. And it's so, and it's almost like aggravating to me to see this happen, because it's like, if you are average IQ, you have the potential to do anything on the planet. You can legitimately learn how to do anything. If you have average IQ, you can learn how to do anything. If you go backwards your entire life, that's almost, it's almost aggravating to see this happen on a massive scale. It's like, if you have average IQ, you can learn how to do anything. You can legitimately learn how to do anything. All right, and it's like, why would you learn to become a bum? Why would you learn to become a bum? Right? I mean, why? Go and actually learn how to do something useful. Right? Actually be useful. Like, actually go and be useful, right? Don't take everybody down with you. Why would you be, why would you end, it's almost aggravating to me. It's like, if you work on something, you can actually improve your situation. Okay, and here's the thing. I would guarantee, because poor people love the word guarantee, because, the slightest little bit of risk, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it, right? But I would guarantee that if you actually applied yourself, if you have average IQ, and you actually applied yourself, instead of walking around in Disneyland and I fell out heaven a 7 and I'm poor and I'm proud and my life's a magical journey, instead of doing that, if you actually applied yourself and you actually went and learned how to do something like this, 98% of everybody with an average IQ could learn how to do 90% of this. It would just take a long time, maybe 15 years, maybe 12 years, but at the end of the day, you would be able to do 90% of it. All right, you would understand how to use fertilizer. You would understand biomass accumulation, right? The interaction between plants and minerals. You would understand commercial cattle and commercial cattle grading. You would understand how to run a business. You could learn how to do all of that. 90% of it. And maybe even 110% of it. Maybe maybe you could even do better than me. All right, but you have to actually go out and start, practice. You actually have to go out and start learning how to do this stuff and actually start doing it. And this is also why I say things like, if you grow 10 acres of grass, even if you mess it up for 10 years in a row, you would only lose like $5,000. It doesn't matter. You would lose like $500 a year. And, I would hope that, that you don't mess it up completely, right? Because I give you all this information, but if you mess it up, even if you mess it up for 10 years in a row and you keep trying, that's effectively what I had to do. I effectively did not get paid at all until my 12th year. Think about that for a minute. I effectively had to learn how to do all of this stuff by myself, and I did not get paid until my 12th year. Think about that for a minute. Do you think I just woke up one day and started doing this? That is not how the world works. You're an idiot. I did not even get paid until my 12th year. All right, imagine that. Just think about that for a minute. All right, but if you can do 10%, if you can do 10% of this, you can actually practice for free. And that is also why I say things like, if you grow a 10-acre field of grass, let's say that you go and you buy yourself a 20-acre field and you pay $1,000 a month for it and you fertilize it. I mean, you could easily, fertilizing 10 acres Fertilizing 10 acres of grass costs about $350 a month, 8 months out of the year, and I graze my grass 24/7. I've already said that when you fertilize a field, if you harvest that biomass, you will have to fertilize your field more because you are pulling the mineral nutrients out of the plant material when you harvest the biomass. Like like let's say that you have a cow, right? Let's say that you have an animal, and this animal, there's a piece of grass on the floor. There's a clump of grass on the floor, and the cattle walks by and they eat that grass. The grass, the minerals that have been stored in the plant material will then enter the body of the cow and be stored in the body of the animal. You will have to replenish those minerals for that grass to regrow. Right, that's very simple. You understand that, right? Everybody understands that. I mean, granted that you have average IQ, there are minerals in your field. Your plant will grow, and when the minerals are collected by your plant, right, and then you have carbon dioxide gas and you have sunlight, when there is an interaction between these things, the biomass of the plant will begin to accumulate, right? The minerals that the plant has obtained will begin to store itself in the leaf material of the plant. So when the animal walks by and eats that plant, that those minerals that plant has obtained is now entering the body of the bovine. And when it enters the body of the bovine, those minerals are stored in the animal. So when you think about it, and you will see this happen, when you graze your field, you will need to fertilize it more. So if you are just growing hay, if you are only growing hay, and that is all that is, you're focusing yourself on growing hay, because let's say that you only have, let's say that you only have $500 a year. Let's say that you only have, $250. You can still grow 10 acres of hay for $250. Granted that you're not having your animals walk around and chew it. You can still grow 10 acres of hay for $350. And when you grow your hay, you can harvest the hay and sell it and get all your money back. You might even make a small profit. All right, legitimately. All right, even if you messed it up for 10 years in a row, you would only lose like $5,000. You probably wouldn't even lose any money, because at some point you will succeed, right? At some point you will succeed, and then you will make your money back. Chances are you're not going to lose any money, right? And this is also why I, stress the importance of learning how to grow grass. Growing grass is very cheap. It is very cheap, but it is also very complicated. When you actually look at growing grass like me, when you take a look at me growing grass, I effectively have some of the best results on the planet. I effectively do way better than everybody at growing grass. Effectively, that is my number one skill. I am better at growing grass than effectively doing any other skill set on the entire planet. Running cattle, running a business, I am better at growing grass than any of those other things. Substantially better. All right, I effectively have some of the best results on the planet. All right, you can legitimately go on the internet right now and look up scientific published papers, and you can go and watch documentaries on commercial farms. My grass is doing better than theirs. I legitimately graze my grass 24/7 with 3 to 4 animals per acre, 500-pound animals, and my grass is still 2 to 3 feet tall. All right, it costs me like $350 a month, 8 months out of the year. All right, and this is also why, if you messed it up for 10 years in a row, you probably wouldn't mess it up for 10 years in a row. I don't think you would. I mean, at some point you will succeed. And when you succeed, at least you can make your money back. Learning how to farm like this will take a long time. All right, and if you do not start working on it, you will never make it. All right, nobody cares about your opinion. All right, and here's the thing: I legitimately do, and I don't even understand how this happened, but I legitimately do not know anybody even doing 10%. It doesn't matter. I could legitimately be on the internet looking at documentaries on commercial farms. It doesn't matter. I could be going, to the north to a sale barn. I could be going to the south to a sale barn. I could legitimately go in every which way. And there are many ways to take a look at this. If you want to take a look at it in terms of money, I make drastically more money by myself than effectively anybody on the planet doing anything. And I do it as a cattleman. And another way to look at this is when I sell my 20 animals this weekend, I will still have 27 animals left over. And when I sell my 20 animals, I will probably have enough money to buy like 35 animals, something like that, 2 loads of grain, a load of fertilizer, and I will still probably have like $2,000 left over. Legitimately, I can actually, but just by reinvesting the earnings of my cattle business, just by reinvesting my earnings, I could grow my balance sheet by like 70% every 5 months. I had 0 animals die in the last month and a half, and my expenses went down. And I increased the size of my herd by 40-50%. Legitimately, I mean, honest to God, I'm not lying about it. I mean, at the end of the day, God is my witness. Okay, God is my witness. I'm not lying about it. I legitimately had 0 animals die in the last month and a half. I expanded the size of my business by 40-50%, and I reduced my expenses. I spent less than $700 on my entire business over the last 40 days. All right, and at the end of the day, I'm getting paid. I've decided to pay myself this weekend, okay? I've decided to pay myself this weekend, and when I take a look at it for what it is, in terms of a monetary perspective, I will effectively make enough money to expand my balance sheet by about 70% every 5 months, just by reinvesting the money that I make in my cattle business. That's another way to look at it. I'm legitimately compounding growth. And here's the thing, I actually, and also, you have to also, consider that I actually grew my business by about 30%, 40% in just the last 40 days alone. All right, and I actually reduced my expenses. All right, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know how else to put this. It just is what it is. All right, I'm not lying about it. And at the end of the day, God is my witness, and and I've already said that a majority of people are borderline just complete idiots. I mean, a majority of people, and I'm not saying that to be malicious, but you would be surprised. And I've already said that you don't really see these things until okay. You have to understand that financially, I do maybe about 350 times better than the average person, than the median person. When your income, well, not even when your income, but you would be surprised. All right, and I talk about this all the time. You would be surprised. The average person, whatever, their opinions about money, right? My life's a journey. My life, I'm on a Disneyland adventure, whatever it may be, right? Whatever it may be, right? I mean, a lot of people, it's like whatever, scraping out the bottom, going sideways, going downhill very slowly, all sorts of problems, right? And chances are you may not know anybody, and I've already said that in terms of money, the most realistic thing, when talking about money, the most realistic idea to have when thinking about money is to take your money upwards. Okay, I am looking to increase my income, and I would also suggest you don't sell your soul to the devil for the money, because if you sell your soul to the devil for money, you will have a very hard time. I would imagine that you would have a very hard time dealing with the fact that you have money. I would imagine, and me, I'm okay with it because I didn't sell my soul to the devil for money. All right, I run beef cattle, I feed people. And, I understand that I make a massive amount of money, and, I'm okay with it. And I would suggest that you don't sell your soul to the devil for money, because if you sell your soul to the devil for money, what does it matter? You have money, but, it won't, you'll have a very hard time dealing with yourself. But the most realistic idea is to send your money upwards, okay? You do not want to be sending your money downwards, and you do not want to be sending your money sideways, all right? And you'll see this all the time. I mean, the average person will legitimately do anything. That they will be an I fell out of heaven a 7. Legitimate, I fell out of heaven a 7. Proud of themselves and they're poor. Massive list of problems, not doing any better at all ever. Not even considering the possibility of doing better, and gonna die poor. And then the moment that they see an opportunity, the moment they have an opportunity to make the smallest amount of money, it doesn't matter what the amount of money is, it could be very small, like 25 grand. Legitimately would be willing to throw themselves, would legitimately sell their soul for the money. Immediately will sell their soul all the time. You will see people sell their soul for very ridiculous things all the time. And it's borderline like, what in the world, right? Like, why didn't you just work on doing better? Why didn't you just work on actually improving yourself? Why didn't you actually work on actually learning how to do something? You know, because if you did that, you could have, I mean, if you, okay. And let's just take farming as an example, because farming is not the only way to make money. All right, I don't even know anybody even doing 10%. But let's just take farming, for example. If you did 10%, you would be able to practice for free. Legitimately, you could just work on it for the rest of your life, and you would never have to worry about the money, because all of the money that you need to be a farmer would come from the farm itself. You would never have to worry about it again. You would never have, you know, and in the first place, you should not be worried about the money, because let's say that you're looking to grow grass on a 10.5 acre field. Let's say you're looking to grow grass on a 20 acre field, and you're only going to grow grass. You're not going to harvest. You're not going to harvest it with cattle. You will bale it at the end of the year. You'll just call somebody to bale it for you at the end of the year. What is that going to cost you? For you to grow one crop of hay, it will cost you like $500 to grow 10 acres. And if you harvest your hay and you sell the bales, you will be able to make your money back. And let's say that you do grow hay, right? And you do grow hay, and you've really sat there and you thought about it, and I've given you the best information that I can. And let's say that you have hay. Let's say that you have, 3 bales an acre on 10 acres. So let's say that you have 30 bales, and you called somebody and they baled it for you, and now you're sitting there with your 30 bales of hay, and you take a look at your hay, and you have come to the realization that, if you cannot sell it, you can do what with it? You can feed it to cattle, right? And when you feed it to cattle, what is a diet that I would recommend when you're feeding hay? If you are feeding hay, what can you supplement that with to have your animals grow at a commercial level? Let's say that and I've always said that you're looking to achieve the commercial standard. So what is something that you can do? What is a feed that you can mix to give your animals with the hay that would give you commercial standards, that will get you to commercial standards? And also, what weight of an animal should you bring home that I would suggest if you're going to do this? All right, you should bring them in at least 350, 400. All right, you don't want to go any lower than 350. You don't want to go any lower than 350, 400. Okay, that's the weight. You really want them at about 350, 400. And if you have hay, you can mix it with corn and distiller grains. And my mixture for corn and distiller grains is what? 0.4% of their body weight in corn and 0.4% of their body weight in distiller grains, 1-to-1 mixture. That's the mixture that I use. I'm not lying to you about it. That's the mixture that I use. You can feed the hay, and you can supplement them with a little bit of grain, and you can bring in the animals, and when you feed your hay, you can sell your animals and make your money back. Very simple, right? This is nothing to it. Grow the grass first, and if you manage to grow the grass, you can bale it. If you don't want to put your animals on it, you can bale it. And when you bale it and you have your hay bales, you can feed it to the animals. You can mix a little bit of corn and distiller grains. I said 0.4%, right? 0.4%, just under 1%. All right, I anticipate that the average weight of my herd is 15,000 pounds, and I feed 135 pounds, all right? And it's a half and half mixture of corn and distiller grains. All right, legitimately, and I'm not giving you the wrong information, I'm not being a malicious person about it. If you write it down and you legitimately go, it is the best information that I'm telling you the truth. That is something that I do in real life. I'm not just giving you some theoretical thing. I actually use that feed mixture in real life. And where did I find that feed mixture? On Google Scholar. If you go on Google Scholar, you can read published scientific papers on different feed diets that feed yards use, and you can read these papers for free. You can legitimately utilize anything. Whatever your local area has, you can utilize that. If you're near some, if you're near some dairy farm and they are growing some very high quality alfalfa, and you can get it for very cheap. If you're near some cotton plant and they're, whatever it may be, you can legitimately look up any feedstuffs on the internet for free and find a diet that will reach the commercial standard for you for free. All right, and when you feed your animals, make sure that you check their manure. Okay, check their manure. Make sure that their manure looks okay. All right, make sure that their manure looks okay. That's the whole thing. That's how you tell what's going on with your animal. All right, there are many ways to do this. And I'm not giving you the wrong information, but if You know, if running cattle was easy, everybody would do it. All right, most people cannot do it, and then that's why they don't. Because it's almost impossible. All right, if you legitimately want to do something like me, I mean, you're going to have to run 250 to 400 cattle a year by yourself to a commercial standard on your own. All right, and you probably, I mean, and you know, unless you are going to have it, I mean, you are in for the time of your life. If you legitimately want to do something like me, that's what you're going to have to do, okay? You're legitimately going to have to run 250 to 400 cattle a year by yourself to a commercial standard. That is effectively what I am doing. All right, and chances are, and I don't know how else to put this, but chances are you're not gonna, maybe one day, okay, if you legitimately apply yourself and you legitimately go out there and you start learning how to do this stuff, then maybe one day you can make it too, okay? And maybe you can even do better than me, because at the end of the day, I didn't have anybody that taught me how to farm. I didn't have anybody that showed me how to farm. I didn't have anybody that showed me how to grow grass, how to run cattle. Nobody showed me, you know, well, I'm not going to say nobody showed me. I went around I went around and I collected information from the best people that I could. All right, when I learned about cattle diet, I watched somebody on a feed yard feeding 100,000 animals on a commercial feed yard. Same thing with the animal medication, you know, et cetera, right? I mean, but, you know, this stuff is not easy. You know, and I would hope that, you know, at the end of the day, because, you know, what are you going to do? You know, a lot of people are just a massive pile of problems, you know, just a hater and everything, right? I mean, just kind of a worthless bum. But I would hope that, you know, for somebody, I am an inspiration. I would hope that I am inspirational to you. I actually made it. I do drastically better by myself as a cattleman than anybody on the entire planet does doing anything. By a long shot. Multiple hundreds of times. All right, and I actually managed to do it. All right, I actually managed to do it. I legitimately make so much money farming cattle that I can do anything on the entire planet. Short of being an idiot. All right, you know, I don't even worry about money anymore. I legitimately make so much money, I don't even worry about money anymore. My balance sheet, just by reinvesting my earnings, my balance sheet grows by like 70% every 5 months, compounding. At the beginning of the year, I would anticipate that over the course of this year, my income will have gone up by 250 to 350% from the beginning to the end of the year. You know, my income is, and I've spoken about it, my income has entered a point where it is at a point of inflection. My income is skyrocketing. The amount of money that I'm making in the cattle business is going up on an exponential curve. Exponential. It is not linear. The amount of money that I'm making as a cattleman is effectively going like to vertical. All right, I make so much money as a cattleman. I make more money as a cattleman than anybody on the planet doing anything, just about. And I farm 50 acres. All right, and if it was easy, everybody would do it. Nobody cares about an opinion. All right, I actually do this stuff, and you know, and I would hope that for the right person, I am inspirational. Wow, here's a guy who legitimately did the hardest thing that you could, one of the hardest things you could ever imagine. Legitimately, one of the hardest things you could ever imagine. Most people cannot even run 50 cattle a year. And he's out here running 250 to 400 by himself on a 50-acre field. That is incredible. And he is actually exceeding commercial standards. That is phenomenal, right? I would hope that I am inspirational to the right people. You know, because at the end of the day, you're not saving an idiot. Because how are you going to save a man from himself? How are you going to save a person from themselves? You can't. You know, you can't. And I know that that's very sad. But once you know, and I've already said, you know, but once you become an idiot, it's almost always impossible to reverse it. Almost impossible. Chances are you're not going to wake up tomorrow and just suddenly decide, you know what, it is time for me to do better for myself. Chances are you're not. Right? And that's my whole thing. I'm looking to do better for myself, right? I'm looking to improve the situation. I believe that what I do is important. I feed people, and maybe if we do better and we continue to progress, and you know, humanity can do better, you know, humanity will do better as well. I exceed commercial standards by myself. I legitimately do so well farming that I effectively outperformed the entire planet doing anything, almost everybody. All right, and for the right person, I would hope that I am inspirational. I actually am living proof that it is possible. I spent less than $700 on my business in the entire month. And for the last 40 days, I spent less than $700 on my business. And I grew the size of my business by 30 to 40%. And, you know, and I had zero death loss. All right, and I'm actually putting more weight on my animals daily than I anticipated. I'm actually putting on more weight. I'm actually doing better on all fronts, just about. I'm legitimately skyrocketing. All right, and I would hope that I am inspirational to the right person. You know, if you legitimately want to learn how to farm, you know, you can do it, but it will take a long time. And, you know, you cannot be in a situation where you have a bunch of opinions and nothing to show for it, because nobody cares. What are you going to do with that? You're just going to live and die a bum? Is that the big plan? Because that's what's going to happen. And maybe you don't understand that. Maybe you don't understand that you're just going to live and die as a bum. Maybe you don't understand that, but maybe now you do. All right, you're actually going to have to work on stuff. You know, and I give you the best information that I can. At the end of the day, I'm not even, you know, giving you advice. I actually do this stuff in real life. I actually do it. I'm living proof. All right, I'm living proof. It is possible. You can make $20,000 a month, $25,000 a month on a 10.5 acre field running commercial cattle. You can do it. I am living proof. All right, and if you manage to do 10%, you can actually practice for free. I am living proof that it can happen, okay? I'm living proof. I actually do this stuff in real life, and I'll be liquidating my animals this weekend. I'll be liquidating a set of animals this weekend, all right? Y'all have a good one, YouTube.